had died at some point. That story that he shared on the show, is there any way outside of what you shared that it could be something else other than somebody that transformed from human to upright walking dog that maybe was one of those people who weren't able to handle that and could never change back? Is that in your mind what that would be? Or do you think that there are actual creatures out there that maybe come from other realms, or maybe just like some people? I don't personally subscribe to the idea that Bigfoot's just this hairy primate that we can't catch.
Yeah.
I think there's more woo-woo stuff to it. Do you think it's along those lines? What are your thoughts on that side of stuff?
That's a great question. Man, that's brutal. Because I think on one side of it, I think we really do have an entire subspecies of creatures that do exist mostly inside the earth, and they are not readily surface dwelling anymore. And I do believe, like in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, man, inside the London Bridge is a massive room, like a throne room, where they engage in this magic. But this Brotherhood of the Serpent, they call upon Nahash, the dragon. And
would that be in normal terms Satan?
Yeah, most people know him as Satan, right? Yeah. But like there is a great red dragon. Like it's a physical, that's what he looks like in reality. He was cursed, and man, he made him a monster. Yahweh made him a monster. And they would commune with these things. There's 13 grandfathers take 13 of their grandsons, and they bring them into these rooms and do these things on these specific times and rituals for all kinds of stuff. But the dragons tell them the future. This is like always what they've been able to do, is like Satan leads Yeshua up onto a great high place and says, I shows him all the nations of the earth and all their kingdoms and their reigns in a moment of time. He shows them the future. That's what they do. They can show you what's to come. This is why we get hunted by them. He knows if we're going to be part of his adversaries. He knows if we're going to be on his enemy list. And that's why he targets us as our youth. That's what so happens. So many people, they're like, why has my life been a nightmare from the beginning? It's because you have a purpose and a destiny that adversary absolutely categorically does not want to come to pass. It's a real life Terminator scenario. And so he sends his assets in to destroy people, to ruin their life. And those meeting places happen when they sit down in these rooms and they try to call up these creatures. It's from inside the earth. It wasn't like ethereal mist. They were physical things that would come out of these tunnels, and they would come into the room and they would consume the offerings that were given there. And then the words of the Nahash would come forth, and they would prophesy to these guys. Like, they would prophesy out of the mouth of the serpent what each one of their life callings, their shots. He's the shot caller, man. It's like a pimp from prison. He's calling the shots, and you had a bunch of fallen watchers that were in prison in Tartarus for a reason. Yeah, but they got ways of getting messages out, just like the cronies in jail today, and that's what a lot of people are dealing with. They think they're dealing with the top dog, and they're like, I'm finally into the big game. And it's like you're dealing with, a private in the hierarchy, but he can masquerade like a general. And so some people are really dealing with death himself, and some of them are dealing with one of his princes. And this is what my family's covenant was with the dragon. They didn't mess around, man. They went all the way to the chain of command. They uncovered a bunch of, my great-grandfather's grandfather was an archaeologist who dug into the Indian mounds out in the Ohio River Valley, and they started finding a priest class that was these serpent worshippers, and that's what they started calling upon. And they started trying to wake up and rise up Huachiblos, which is these deities, these dragon fire deities that
demand. This is in Ohio?
Where these mounds were found is the Ohio River Valley. Yeah.
Are we talking about serpent mounds?
Yeah, well, this wasn't specifically, not that I'm aware of that it was specifically a serpent mound, but it was a mound that was in an area that was now being farmed.
Okay.
And so whether or not it was specifically a serpent mound, it was not identified as that, but they ended up finding a lot of these ancient tomes. They found the writings of this priest class, and they started using their magic to call back up these fallen ones. And they were, the part of the trade is the priest class has all this secret knowledge that they then use to rule the kings with. And that's what they wanted. So that's how the Reynolds family, this is also documented in a book called The Gilded Leaf by Patrick Reynolds, who was a bloodline descendant specifically and in the actual inheritance of the Winston cigarette company, the tobacco empire that ended up buying Nabisco Foods, that ended up running the world.
What relation is it to you? Like an uncle?
I don't know that I am a bloodline relative of that guy.
Oh, okay.
Patrick Reynolds specifically. My Reynolds family is the one that does the black gold stuff, all the secret, disgusting, dirty money. They're the white launderers of the money, right? But you got to have your seedy, corrupt group, and that's what my family did. They did all the dirty stuff.
Wow.
And so but in his book, in his first-hand account, they talk about the Joshua coin and them using a coin that was from Judas that he betrayed Yeshua with, and the 30 pieces of silver that was the blood guilt money. They would touch that silver coin to anything they wanted, and it would grow an empire. The cost was always a massive bloodshed and a massive demand of life, and that's always what the serpent required. He wanted life. And so, like, on one side of the equation, that's what they used to build the Reynolds empire. That's what they used to go down Alcoa and all the aluminum industry and all of the stuff they spray on us and the stuff they poison us with and inject us with and all the variables of complexities of targeting that they've done against us. That all comes from that covenant that those two brothers sat down, did, and entered into a blood covenant with the dragon, man. And this is what the fruit of it was. Well, my family entered into that on a different route through this priest class thing. And that's what they would practice down there. And that's the same old religion that people have been using a long time. So on one side of it, I've seen physical beings that are definitely not like our animals up here come out of these spaces from inside the earth. I've seen in deep underground military bases, dogmen, like you would kind of describe them, some more humanized. And I think a lot of those were experimentation and genetic splicing. I think a lot of that was gene editing stuff that I've seen. But I do believe that some of these things are holdovers from the old days. They're the last of their kinds, and they've been breeding them, right? And I believe that that's the stuff that's prophesied that's going to come back out and cause the hearts of men to stop for fear of looking after these things that are coming up on the earth. You know, that's why everywhere I went throughout my youth, I could go to these tunnels and these caves and call out, and I could hear them, and they would call back, you know, and it's like it's a seductive power that draws you back into it.
You could call out to them? Like, yeah. Was it like a language or a sound or what?
Oh, yeah, man. You can learn to call to them. You can go out here in these hills out here and do it. You can still do it tonight. On these full moons and stuff, you can start calling out, and you'll think you'll hear coyotes at first, and then all of a sudden it's a totally different, you know, it's a different sound that starts to resonate, and then it's a different one that calls off from over here, right? You got to understand, some of these guys that you think are just neighbors and stuff, or just people, like, this is what they keep in their barn, you know?
Are they
this is the stuff they keep. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I go out hunting for these things.
I understand. I understand completely, man. That being said, I got hooked back into it with Timothy Alberino and Steve Quill and a lot of these guys when I was married, and my wife didn't know anything about this whole stinking world of who I was and everything else.
How'd you meet your wife if she didn't know who you were? You suckered her. You suckered her.
That's a way to put it, man.